I remember the day very clearly. It was February 13th, the day before Valentine's. My lovely wife called me to ask if I'd like to go for a walk when she got home. Why, yes, I decided. That would be great. Except when I went to change into some more suitable pants, I couldn't get them closed. Pants in a size that I had been referring to as my fat pants for years no longer fit me. Not even a little. I was now fatter than I had ever been in my entire life. It was a defining moment. I resolved to lose the weight and take better care of myself from then on, and we all lived happily ever after. The end. I'm kidding. It was a watershed and an epiphany, but it was definitely not defining. The only people who have defining moments, those moments that shape your entire life without any effort on your part, are fictional. Bruce Wayne sees his parents murdered, and from then on he is the thing that fear fears. Jay Gatsby learns the inequities of wealth in the trenches of World War I and resolves to become wealthy so he never suffers that fate again. I have an epiphany that I am really fat, and I have to eat less and exercise more. I have to choose to exercise at least a little every day. I have to choose not to eat every day, over and over again throughout the day. Just typing that sentence has triggered a decision tree where I was forced to choose not to go into the kitchen and snag a piece of cake. That's what real life is. We have watersheds that inspire us to try to change. We have benchmarks that show us how much we have changed. We don't have defining moments. We are not defined by moments. Our lives are built on millions and millions of decisions, both small and large. And the minute we start thinking otherwise, that's the minute we start dying. Obviously, we make a lot of these decisions well below our conscious awareness. If we didn't, our brains would constantly going left foot forward, left foot, right foot, left foot, and we'd have no room for lyrics by 70s pop sensation Melanie. As I understand it, there are a few modes of this sub-rosa decision-making, but for brevity's sake, we'll just look at muscle memory, habit, and visceral response. Muscle memory is how you walk, how you throw or catch a ball, how skilled musicians play their instruments. Muscle memory is how practice makes perfect, because every time you repeat a simple action, it reinforces a connection in your brain that makes that action more fluid and thoughtless. It can also increase intrinsic errors, which sucks because muscle memory is very difficult to change. Habits are like muscle memory, but more complex. Non-chemical addictions and little rituals are habits. My own tendency towards boredom eating is a habit. Habits can be changed relatively easily, but they do take work. Visceral reaction is much older and darker than either of the two forms above. Gut reactions are as old and powerful as emotions themselves because they are the whole purpose of having emotions. Anything that can run away or seek and pursue a mate is acting on visceral reactions. The older emotions, the ones on which visceral reactions are based, are all about individual survival. Fear, anger, desire, attraction. These are all about evading a threat, removing competition, fulfilling basic needs, and finding a mate to continue your line. If you're out on the Olduvai Gorge fighting the good fight with Lucy and the gang, these emotions and the responses they engender are what you need. Even now, 4 million years away from Lucy and her Pithecine brethren, there are plenty of people who go through life almost entirely informed by their feelings. We've grown more complex in that time after all, and our emotional systems have gone well beyond flight, fight, food, fuck. I can't think of a single reason why a modern human shouldn't rely on visceral reaction to get along in his day. Except that emotions are stupid. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying people are stupid for feeling their emotions. I'm saying that the emotions themselves are, by definition, thoughtless responses to stimuli. They may not be limited to the 4 Fs, but they remain in that spectrum. All emotions evolve to make momentary decisions based on superficial information. The problem with that is that we don't live in a world of superficial decisions anymore. At some point in the last 4 million years, we developed the ability to think beyond the moment and look into the future. One of our ancestors had an epiphany. He realized that instead of running away from the Smilodont, he could stab him with the pointy stick he had created for hunting deer, and then he never had to run away again. And they all lived happily ever after, until they were crushed by a mammoth, because stab it with a pointy stick is not a one-size-fits-all solution. But the point stands. Every step we have taken from the trees to the caves to the cities has been the direct result of one or more people taking the time to think beyond their visceral reaction and find a better way. That's hard to do. Visceral reactions are hardwired into our brains, and most of them elicit a physical response. Worse, emotional responses don't change. Sure, you can become desensitized to specific things, but not to the class of events. You can watch Bambi over and over so you stop crying like a baby when you hear the fatal shot in the meadow, but that won't stop the tears when Hiccup's dad jumps in front of Toothless's flame. The one good thing about emotions is that they're like fires. They fade pretty quickly if you don't keep feeding them. If you wait them out and don't respond until they've passed, you have the opportunity to think things through. You can't stop the emotion, but you can suppress the physical response and give yourself time to think. We see what happens when we don't do that all the time. The dipshit who tries to make up time by cutting people off as he zips down the highway at 100 miles per hour, and the psychopath who tears after him in revenge for getting cut off, are both letting their emotions do their thinking for them. We've all said something in anger that, in retrospect, wasn't fair or sometimes even true, and we realize that the world would be a better place if we just didn't. Unfortunately, even though a visceral response can often be fixed with a simple apology or correction, that's not what happens a lot of the time. Even if we realize our error, we don't like being wrong. And much of the time when we're called on it, we hate the humiliation of being wrong in public, so we double down and compound the error. A few months ago, a highly edited video was posted to the internet showing what appeared to be a group of privileged private school boys, one in particular, menacing an old Native American man. The media went wild. Within minutes, there were reports and opinion pieces on how the alt-right had influenced children to become disrespectful and full of hate. By the end of the day, however, full videos of the event from different angles showed that the boys were just waiting for their tour bus. It further showed that they were waiting peacefully while being harangued by a third group. That was when the Native American and his group inserted themselves into the situation and advanced on the boys, who were simply standing in place. When this news came out, most media outlets posted retractions and corrections of their previous stories, defusing outrage and anger. A few outlets, however, ignored the complete and accurate information, focusing on interviews with the Native American where he spun stories that were easily refuted with just a casual viewing of the full video. Now the worst ones are being sued for millions of dollars, and instead of admitting their error and settling the lawsuits, they're pretending that their coverage had been fair and informed the whole time. This is the kind of trouble you can get into if you let your emotions run the show. And let's be clear, that's what's happening here. Rather than question their emotional response and seek the facts before acting, these outlets responded viscerally, then only engaged their brains to rationalize their irrational behavior. This is why an investigation of the president that reported no wrongdoing has resulted in louder and more aggressive calls for impeachment. It's why we've sunk billions into biofuels that, overall, use more energy than they produce while denuding the Amazon. This is why couples become resentful and engage in tiny wars over whose turn it is to do the dishes until they get a divorce, citing issues that wouldn't exist if one of them had picked up a sponge. I'm not saying we should live without emotion. That's a stupid thing to say, and anyway, it's impossible. I'm not even saying it's always a bad thing to react on emotion. If someone punches you in the face, you have every right to punch them back, if only to keep them from punching you in the throat next. I am saying that we should at least try to let our higher brains do the job that we evolved them to do. Take a breath, think about the situation, choose our actions based on thought and evidence instead of raw emotion. I am saying that if we do falter and let our emotions run, we should put our pride aside, admit we were wrong, and stop making things worse. Think back across all the bad days you've had. Did wallowing in anger or sadness make them better? I can come up with 10 moments in the past year where I could have handled things better if I'd just given myself room and time to think them through. I bet you could come up with 5. I want to believe that I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. I need to learn to admit when I'm just not right.